Hello and welcome back to AVR120. In this session, we're going to be going over some more advanced class concepts, in particular, passing some class objects to a battle method that we create. So let's go ahead and begin here. This is predominantly going to be in the code editor, no PowerPoint for this portion here. So the first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we've created our warrior class from the last session. And in this session, we're going to go ahead and create a few additional classes. So um, if you remember, in order to create a class, you're going to go to the project section and go to add class. And we'll go ahead and create an enemy class. All right, so now that we've created this enemy class here, we have to give it some properties and initialize and create a constructor. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and start creating the properties for this class. The first property we're going to go ahead and create is a public string enemy name, just like we did in the warrior class. We'll then go ahead and create a public int hit points. We'll go ahead and create a public int strength. We'll go ahead and create another int called gold given. And yet another int here. We'll call this experience given. And we'll create one more, and this will actually be the enemy ID. Okay, so we've got our properties here. Now the next step is to go ahead and create the constructor. Now, if you remember from the last video, a constructor is a way to essentially initialize these properties to a default value when you create the instance of the class or instantiate the class object here. So we'll go ahead and set that up. And actually, if you go ahead and just, it should actually complete this for you. Usually it does. Give me 1 second here. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and just write it out normally here. So string, and it's a lowercase e for enemy name, an int hit points, an int for strength. I'm just going down the list here. So an int for gold given, an int for experience given, and int for enemy ID. And the way we write this is this, and this keyword refers to the object itself, so the enemy object. So this this object's property, and we set that equal to the enemy name. Oops, sorry. Lowercase e enemy name parameter. And we just go ahead and do this for every single one of these. right. So we have the constructor created now. I'm just going to go ahead and save. And then what we'll go ahead and do is we'll actually create one additional class. So first, I'll go ahead and instantiate this class. So again, just as a reminder, we would create an enemy, and I'll call this null, an evil null, and we will set it to a new instance of the enemy class, and we will instantiate it to these values, and I'll just name this null. And you can see that when I put the comma in there, again, it tells us what variables to input, essentially, what property we are inputting these values for. So in this case, we are setting the null's hit points, and I'll put them to, like, maybe 5. I'll put the strength to 1. Gold given, I'll do 5 again. Experience given, let's do maybe we can just do 5 too. And then enemy ID I will set to 1. Okay, so we've instantiated the null, an instance of the null class called null, right? And with the name null and all of these default values here. So now we'll go ahead and we're going to create another class. And a lot of times classes will be, concrete things like a warrior or an enemy, right? But when you're generally creating applications, particularly like when you're creating games, you'll go ahead and you'll want essentially one kind of master object. One approach to making a game is to have like a master object that essentially controls the flow or the states of the game. And so we're going to go ahead and set that up now. So we will call this, we'll create a class, and we will call this the game state controller. And this will control essentially what state you are in the game. So we'll go ahead and add some strings here. I'll go ahead, or excuse me, some properties. I'll go ahead and put a public and not string, excuse me, a bool, and I'll call it battle started. Get and set that property. And a public bool explore started, and I will get and set that property as well. Excuse me, public bool, and I'll set this bool to begin game. And I will make a final bool for endgame. So it doesn't have to be, your program doesn't have to be exactly like this, right? But this is one approach you could have for making a more object-oriented console RPG. So we'll go ahead here and we will create the constructor now, public, and we need to put the game state controller in there, just like that. And we have to go ahead and set all of the parameters here. So bool started, and it needs to generally go in the order that you listed the properties, right? So we'll call this explore started. We'll begin game, and bool endgame. And we'll go ahead and set this dot battle started equal to the lowercase battle started variable, or parameter, excuse me. And this explore started, set that equal to the lowercase explore started parameter. This, same thing, you kind of get the picture, I think, at this point. We'll go ahead and set this here. And endgame, set that here as well. And one thing to note too, I'm just going to delete this and show you. So let's say I start writing endgame. Okay, so if you're ever confused, you always want what's to the right of the assignment operator to be essentially a variable. So this little square, okay? So you'll see that there is the property endgame. So that's this, and the same as this up here, right? And I'm setting that property equal to this lowercase endgame variable here, which you can also, which is a parameter that's passed into the constructor there. Okay. If you're using the newest version of Visual Studio, I believe it actually completes this constructor for you. So something to bear in mind there. And we're going to go ahead and create on the game state controller, we're going to create a battle function, or a battle method, I should say. So in terms of like classes and their structure, the properties are kind of the data of the class, right? The fields of the class, and the methods are the functionality of that class. So, the warrior might have a skill method, and that's would be like it's kind of that class's functionality, or you might have a uh, some other type of method there. Same with enemy, maybe it has like a die method that gets called, and it gives a message before it dies or something like that. But in this kind of a little bit abstracted class here, we're gonna put like the systems. I'm gonna put the systems to kind of that run the game. I'll have a couple of them on this game state controller here. So we'll go ahead and I'm gonna make a battle function. So it'll be a public void battle. All right. And we'll go ahead and I want to pass this the warrior. I want to pass it an enemy, and I want to go ahead and pass it actually pass it itself here. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that now, and now we can create essentially a battle loop that will loop through when you run into the battle there, and it will display some text and update the properties of the warrior class instance that you pass into it, as well as the enemy class instance as well. So we'll go ahead and start writing this, and it'll be a while loop. So we'll say while the warrior dot hit points is greater than 0, and the enemy dot hit points is greater than 0, we'll run this loop. And so we want to run this loop essentially when they're both alive. So we'll go ahead and we will put this statement here. So the enemies dot hit points. Okay, so we're accessing their hit point property, and we're going to subtract it by the warrior's strength property. Basically, going to be like our damage power. So we'll go ahead and we'll do the same thing for the warrior. We'll basically take his hit points, and we will subtract the enemy's strength property. And I'll put some flourishes in here. Nothing too fancy, but some fun little color changes. So we can actually adjust the foreground color of the text, or we can actually, this is, sorry, let me back up. The foreground color is the text, so this will adjust the text color to a different color, and you can see we have this console color option. So if we go ahead and click that, we can set that to all these different colors. So you can choose a different color. I'll go ahead and pick red. And then I'm going to write some text to explain what's going on here. So we'll say, and we're going to use the substitution method we kind of used earlier. So again, that is just whatever's inside these brackets here. We're going to have a list of variables, and whatever the first variable is will be what goes inside of this first bracket. So we'll say in this case, it would be the enemy. So the null will strike for, and then we'll put the, and actually, get rid of this, sorry. We'll say the null strikes, and then we'll put the warrior class instance there. So the name for, and we'll say he gets struck for, and then we will put the enemy's strength value so we can know how much damage has been done. So we'll then put the warrior dot character name. Okay, so as the first um, property, we'll put the enemies dot enemy name, and then we'll also put the warrior dot strength value. And you can see I made an error here because I put brackets instead of parentheses. So if that's not good, I'll try to zoom in a little bit. And then I need to put a semicolon here. So essentially what this line is saying, it's, the while loop will continue while their health is both greater than 0. The enemy will lose hit points based on the warrior's strength. After every run iteration of the loop, the warrior will lose hit points based on the enemy's strength. The text will change to red when you're in a battle, and then we'll say console.writeLine. The warrior's name strikes for the warrior's strength value, or excuse me, sorry, the warrior's name strikes the enemy's name for the warrior's strength value. And so we can actually go ahead and I'm going to copy this line, and I'm just going to go to the next line, and I'm going to paste it. And we can pretty much do the same thing, except instead of the warrior, we're going to put the enemy's name. Enemy name. And where enemy name was, we will put the warrior's name. So that's character name. And then we will say for the enemy's strength value. And then we will do a console.readLine so that it pauses it at the end of each iteration of the loop and waits for you to press enter. And then I'm going to clear the console so we can get rid of all that unnecessary text on the screen. And then I want to print out the, sorry, right line. I want to print out the hit points. So we can go ahead and say this would be 0. Current hit points are, and we will say the warrior dot character names and the warrior dot hit points. And we can actually do the same thing for the enemy. So and just remove this here, and instead we'll do enemy dot enemy name and enemy dot hit points. And then we'll do a console.readline here. And then a console.clear. So essentially what this will do is run through this list and subtract the health of each, the hit points of each, the warrior and the enemy by the strength. And now we need essentially a check to see if one of them falls below 0. And if they do, we want to run some code. So for example, we can do the warrior dot character name. All right. So, oops, sorry. It's actually his hit points. We want to do a check on the hit points, right? So if the warrior's hit points are less than or equal to 0, okay, then I'm going to do a couple more flourishes here again. I'm actually just going to copy this line because it's going to be quicker. Paste it. Go ahead and do another console.writeLine. And I'll say, you have been defeated. Your body lays in a crumpled heap at the feet of your enemy. Embarrassing. And then we'll do a console.readline and console.clear. And then we'll go ahead and, just to add insult to injury, we'll tell them, the user, that the game is over. All right. So the next logical thing, right, is if we're checking the warrior's hit points, if they're less than 0 and we have some text run, then we should also do that for the target. So we'll say if the enemy's hit points are less than or equal to 0, then we'll go ahead and we'll do the same thing here. And we'll go ahead, I'm just going to paste that, so that first line there, I pasted the console color change. Sorry, I'm going to delete this here. And I'm actually going to, I want this to be green. I want it to be a happy color. A happy little console color. So we'll go ahead and we'll do right line here. And we will type, you are victorious. Huzzah! Very, very nerdy. And then we'll go ahead and do readline to pause the execution. We'll do console.clear to clear out the text from the console. And then we'll go ahead and we will set the warrior's gold value. Okay. Get access to their property. And we will add the enemy's gold given value. So whatever gold the enemy has will be transferred to the warrior when he defeats them. And we can do the same thing for the experience. All right. Okay, so just to review again, we have created a game state controller. It's going to control the state of the game. We've created a battle function, and we're going to pass in an instance of the warrior, the enemy class, and the actual game state controller itself. And then we'll have it run some checks in a loop on the warrior class and the enemy that we passed in, the warrior and the enemy that we passed in there. And we can go ahead and we can save this. We'll go back to the main class here, or the main section of the program. And we'll want to go ahead and also instantiate a game state controller. So we'll go ahead and write game state controller, and I'm just going to call it game master, and I will instantiate it here to an instance of the game state controller class. So we'll need all these bools denoted. So I'm going to say battle started is false. I'm going to say explore started is false. And I'm going to say begin game. I'm going to set that to true because we are beginning the game, right? And I will say the end game is going to be false. Okay, so we'll go ahead and now we can kind of run a check. Now that we have all that instantiated, we can actually run a check on the game master value. So we can say if game masters, if their begin game value, okay, is equal to true, all right, then we'll run some code. Now, if the game master's begin game value is true, this is kind of redundant, okay? When you're looking at code, that bool will assume to be true unless otherwise stated that it's false. So this is redundant. We'll leave it in here just to make sure that it's crystal clear that the bool value is true. But generally, like that's how that would be written a lot of times in code. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. And then we can go ahead and call the when the game begins, right? We can go ahead and call the battle function off of the game master, right? Because we created that function there, or the method there. So we'll go ahead and call the battle. We'll see that it pops up here, and we want to pass it the warrior variable, which in this case is my adventurer. We'll want to pass it the enemy variable, which in this case, sorry, it's not enemy, it's null. Yep. And we'll go ahead and pass it the game master as well. And then we'll need to put a semicolon at the end. And I actually made a mistake here. shame on me. We'll need to make that a lowercase l because we don't want um, because we got to follow the camel case convention, which states that the beginning of each variable name is a lowercase. All right, so if you've been following along up to this point, I apologize. I actually did find an error in some of the code, which was preventing the this from running. So just make sure, we're going to go back to the enemy class here, and just make sure that you have a lowercase h for your hit points. When you're setting your property equal to, uh, when you're setting up the constructor, I should say, you need your property needs to be equal to the same exact uh, parameter that's in this list. Okay, so that's a lowercase e in this, a lowercase h in this case. So I made a mistake here, and I just said it's this was a capital H, so it wasn't running. So if you're having issues with the program running, just make sure you're paying close attention to the case of the first letters there. And if we go ahead and run this now, we will see the magic happen. So go ahead. And you will see the battle starts, right? And it starts because this is true, okay? Um, this is true because we've set it to true there, okay? Um, and I apologize. I think this was actually down here, but so I'm just gonna stop it really quick and put that back where it was. And I think also I want to put this before the battle starts. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll run it again. It'll say Bilbo. And it says Bilbo strikes the knoll for 10, and then it clears that. And looks like that's not correct. So let's go back and we will go to that line in the code. So let's scroll down here. And we can see that I did not put the substitution in here. So we'll go ahead and, oops, sorry. We'll go ahead and put 1 there, and we will do the same thing here. And make sure that the first part of your substitution is 0, and then it goes 0, 1, 2, just like an array. Go ahead and save this, and we will run it again. Okay. All right, and we'll see. So this line of code runs, okay. This line of code runs now, and you are victorious, huzzah, because we've taken away 5 of the nulls. It was a -5, and so if it's less than 0, it's going to run that code there. So, yep, it's this should be all set there. The battle function should be working now. In the next video, we're going to go over a little bit more advanced concepts. I encourage you to kind of play around with this. You can maybe take some of the text and such from your prior iteration of this project and start adding it. Maybe you could do something like an if check to see if the explore game is happening, and you could set this begin game to false or something, and you can input your text there. So that's it for today. If you have any other questions, go ahead and let me know. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you in the next video.